Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the June installment of the From the Bench Virtual Studio Tour series. My name is Sarah Songer, and I'm the Program and Studio Manager at the San Francisco Center for the Book. And today I'm very happy to welcome Insiya Dhatt as our guest. Insiya transitioned from a 15-year e-commerce tenure to art after earning her master's in banking and economics. Her artist books have become a medium to explore and understand the world as she digs deeper into interpretations and narratives around her. So welcome, Insiya.
Oh, hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm going to start my presentation because I don't think everyone wants to look at my face. So let me share screen. There we go. All right. So what I thought I would do is walk you guys through sort of my introduction to book arts. And literally, it started in 2017 when there was a class. I just moved to San Francisco 2017, and there was a class that was about various small books, making artist books. And my husband actually said, why don't you go for this class? And I was like, well, I don't know what they are. And so there I met two people who I've kind of stayed in touch with, Barbara Rominsky, who is actually here today, and Kathleen Walker. And they showed us amazing books. And the book that changed sort of my life was this book, The House, which was, I was doing laser cut at the time. And so by Elison, and then So Levitt was the other books they had. Suddenly it came to me with Barbara and Kathleen kind of doing, it was a 5-week session, and they showed us books. And I was going through the list that Barbara had put up, and I didn't realize that I had seen Karen's book, Karen Handler, I had seen Alicia's, and I was just like, wow, these are all the people that, it's a small kind of world out there. Anyway, so these were my experiments during class. This was when Kathleen was kind of taking us half the session, and, flag books, accordion books, more accordion books, double-sided accordion books. And then, this was sort of, she would give us a little project every day. And of course, I would go crazy over them and spend hours doing that, but that's me. And then a lot of my paper cutting at the time became to inform my books. So I started doing a series on illusions. And that was when my first book sort of started. I've done tons and tons of pattern cutouts. This was a separate project for a long time. Layering paper, interchangeable, putting one different on, you can see some of these have different layers and colors and things like that. So this was sort of my world. This is what I was doing. And then, of course, this little arrow had to come here. Then what happened is, basically, I was doing all the paper cutting. I went to this class, and basically from SF MoMA, Barbara introduced me to Laura. Laura said, take as many classes as you can at SFCB. That's your best friend. And so I did. And she also introduced me to Ginger Burrell, who was one of the first people, and Baba. From that, Ginger said, let's go to FOBA. There's a focus on book arts. It's how I got sort of exposed to all the different organizations, and how everyone is very supportive. I don't know if you guys feel it, but I feel like my entire book arts career has been about people helping me. One of the books that was at FOBA got selected for an exhibition at SFCB. I met Jenny, and Jenny had a talk, and then I met Alicia, and then there was HBC. So there's, it's just, what I want to say is that I don't think I've done banking. I was at Prudential at one point. I was in tech, both sides of tech, the IT, the sort of technology side and the management side, retail, but I've never seen a group of more supportive people than the book arts. So I just want to be able to say thank you. And then, of course, I met Karen through, and then I just came back from American Academy of Bookbinding, 2 weeks there. So this is the history. Sorry, it's a little boring, but um, I what I wanted to kind of address today or talk about was I started doing book arts mainly because I enjoyed it, because, I was seeing books that were like just an expression of yourself. So I started doing books like the carousel and, with my paper cutouts, flag books. And then I will just start this video. I started doing flip books, cutout flip books that so you see, these are, I'll just give it, tend to go fast, so I'm going to try and go slow. Anyway, and that's another one. All right. And then eventually, you get to a point where it's fine to make things for fun. You start asking the question, and I think some of my mentors started asking me the question, why? Why are you doing this? It's fine for fun for some time, but what do books mean to you, and why are you doing it? Because you're taking all this time and this trouble. And what I realized that books became a way for me to tell stories. And what better way for me to tell stories than, or what better subject? We know ourselves best and my experiences. And so it was like, okay, I'm going to talk about my experiences and how I see the world. And sometimes it's weird and it's quirky. And, having lived and been born in India and come here, there were lots of, changes. And lots of cultural differences that, I started seeing. Like for me, as you can see in my work, I have a lot of intricate designs. It's very heavily patterned. And that's where I came from. Everywhere I saw, there were patterns. So, and people were like, wow, that's a little bit much. And, but anyway, so there's three things sort of I ask myself, or as I've learned with all my different mentors, what am I trying to say or show or communicate? Why is it important? And lastly, how do I express this? And within this, and you kind of go in a circle of how you do this. So it's within expression and execution of idea, there's materials, and within why is it important is it can be that it is for fun, but it may not be. It may be that there are certain things I want to express. So what I'm going to do is going to go through a few of my books and kind of show you how and why I did them. So here is the first one, which is Heart Longs. This book was a call for entry, and it was about retrospective, introspective. And I started creating this book, and it was a pattern book. And I think somebody asked me, why do you create patterns? And I remember thinking, I used to go for summer vacations to all these different mosques. And I used to, instead of paying attention to the prayers or anything, I was generally counting the stars and the squares and patterns. And so I've been obsessed with, I see patterns everywhere. And so I thought, well, my experience of that, I know I don't want to go back to that experience of being, behind a parda. But I miss it. I miss the beauty that I saw over there. So I created this book, which obscures the view of the words that are written behind it, to kind of emulate that experience. And it's also a bound book because Heidi Kyle's binding, because it's like, it's part of, how do you say, the experience of being overlapping, things are overlapping in life. It's never as clean as we want it to be. So that's the Heart Longs. Another project I did, Pattern Unseen, was this time I decided I was going to do patterns, and there was another call for entry. So a lot of my motivations come from having deadlines, but there are also ideas that are floating around. So what happened is, I had a sort of thing with my sister. I think we were going back and forth on something. And I don't know if you have noticed it, but we try our best to kind of put all the holes or all the things in our personalities in a sort of, we try to fill them up, or we try to make them, like we try to change ourselves because as we become adults. But when you go back to your family or to your sister, you know, those defenses, those you know, things break up, and you're like, stop, you know, or whatever it might be, you know, with my sister. Sorry, that was not funny. My sister is on the call at 1 a.m. in India. So anyway, this book came out of showing how we all are born with patterns. These patterns throughout our lives, we try to change. We try to cover them up. We try to, you know, so some of these are made of delicate paper that is laser cut, that, you know, some of it is disintegrated, some of them are just marked. And that was the idea was we all have our own patterns that we come with based on our lives. And this is what that book was about. I'm just going to check time. Okay. Boxed In was another book. This was right around the pandemic. And also, you know, there was all the political stuff going on. And I think I have to say it, in the 20 plus, I think it's almost been 30 years now that I've been here, I don't think I had felt the biases that I felt during the pandemic. And it was very strange. It was suddenly there was a new word, BIPOC. And I was like, I'm supposed to be BIPOC, you know, and there's nothing wrong with it because there was recognition needed for that. But suddenly there's this divide that was happening, and which I had not faced, which is surprising, but, you know, or at least I had ignored, but now it was in my face, and now it became sort of a thing that I had to acknowledge. So Boxed In came from that, where I created these 3 books. I had a class with Karen with her triangle book, and that's how this idea came upon, because when you take these triangles and you make it into a hexagon, again, patterns, I found that it becomes a little box, you know, it's a visual. So the 3 books were What, Where, and Why. And I wanted it, and each of them is, it's an addition, it's a variable addition of 10, and each one of them is different from each other because I wanted everyone to have their own version of it. So that's this book. Well, I thought last, very quickly, I will go through sort of how these ideas come to me. One is I want to talk about, there was NorCal Media got in touch with me, and they said, we want you to, you know, we've seen your work and we want you to talk about how you go about incorporating your culture. And so I was like, you know, and that triggered another idea, which was, I have never spoken about henna or the Indian, you know, there's a lot of Islamic patterns. But henna is one of those patterns that, I don't know if you guys are aware, it's a color, it's a leaf that's crushed and added with, you add sugar and tea water and all, and it forms a colorful hand. And it started off as a way of decorating. People used to decorate their faces with it, but the most iconic way, or the most common way, is that you decorate your hands for an occasion. And so I was like, how about doing something with that? So anyway, I started with that. I started making henna patterns on paper using the laser. I looked for, you know, and henna is kind of like bride is the most common, you know. These days, not a lot of people do henna, but I thought, oh, why don't I talk about brides? You know, they have that nervousness. So I found a poem. My friend Athena wrote a beautiful poem called Hands Lattice. And then I started experimenting. And this is sort of my process. I know sometimes I kind of go a little aggressive on my iterations. Each of these could be different books by themselves, but to me, this is the way I think. And so I have, so I have over here a letterpress version, which was just a, you know, with 2 colors. I have, laser cut. I have different, different hand shapes and all different things. And then, so when I was doing this, I was like, what am I trying to say? So every time on the step of the way, I go through that. And I created a dragon fold one. I created one with an overlay with and then I started thinking about, that is good that I'm talking about henna and all that, but then there is a story behind it. Why am I talking about this? And so I took the step to actually talk about my story, which was, I did get arranged marriage and came here. I knew the guy, but it did not work out. And a lot of times women are, they don't have a choice to leave their marriages, unfortunately, because, they can't support themselves. There's family pressure. But I felt lucky that I was here, that I didn't have to face all the criticism. And so I was able to so what I wanted to do was talk about that aspect of a girl leaving her home, and suddenly she becomes, I remember when I got married, very next day I went back and my mom was like, oh no, you're a guest now. And that, that is sort of a cultural thing. I think she was joking. I know she was joking because I'll always be her daughter. But there is something in there about daughters suddenly belonging to another family. We take their last names, and it's got to do with inheritance, all that. And suddenly they don't have a right over what you do after your marriage. So if you have to work, it's your in-laws that do that. They have an opinion about it. And so all these, there's so much of that never gets talked about, that I felt I wanted to express in this book. So anyway, here's the other thing I decided was, I went back and forth on whether I wanted the books to be letterpressed, but I wanted it to make it like a wedding album, because with Vidai, what you take from your home is, obviously there's the whole dowry system, but we didn't have that, but is your wedding album. That's your identity. And so that's what I did with I started creating different ones. And finally, so these are saris that I covered it with. And this was the final version of the book, where it's almost like photographs are stuck on the cover, with the henna disappearing as she gets older, because as you get older, you can't put so much henna, or as a widow, you can't put any henna. That's generally the rule. And so I'm going to quickly play this as the book that I did. It's in a sari. I use momogami paper, like henna paper, and made cuts, laser cut through it. And I letterpress the words. And then you can see how, she goes through her life, and the henna starts to get a little lighter. And then eventually, it's like disappearing from her hand. And then so this was the book. This was actually in the HBC exhibition. But it was still an artist copy. And then I was like, I think it's not enough. So I decided to do my story. So it's a double-sided accordion. And it talks about what my experience was growing up in India, what happened when I decided to leave my marriage. And so, this was it. I think I've talked about enough of my books. I think this is it. The next thing is, what's next? So one of the things I didn't realize is in book art, there are so many different worlds. There's the artist books was what I was introduced to. There's fine binding, there is printing, there is conservation. It's a huge world. And so I've started to explore sort of, I've done classes with Rebecca Chamley for, full color letterpress. Jessica Spring taught me with the, so I'm thinking of doing patterns with that. Some of my Paloma actually helped me create this lino cut. It's terrible, but anyway. And then I just went to AAB to learn some leather binding with Dawn. So I think the possibilities are endless. I'm very excited, and that's it. So if you have any questions, let me know. I went in fast.
Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who's sending in questions. I've got a few to work through, so please keep them coming. But Sharon's curious about what influenced you to utilize cutouts as your primary style of expression within book arts.
It was actually a day in, I was living in New York at the time, and I was looking at photography books. That's what I had done. And I found a book next to photography was paper. And literally I saw this book by Ogawa that had the most fabulous things in it. And it just changed. It's kind of like, I went home, it had templates so I could cut out. So I could trace them out and cut out. When there are books that are about the beauty and some helpful thing about how to recreate that, nothing like it. And so that's how I started. And then I was like, whoa, I can cut out more things. I can actually, instead of drawing out the patterns, which I was doing, I can, because I was doing a lot of patterns on Illustrator and creating them. And so that's how I got there.
She also wonders if your boxed in edition helped you to process your pandemic experience with bias.
I'm still trying to figure it out. I think being able to talk about it, I think that book was a way of saying, ooh, I wasn't feeling this before, but I am feeling it now. That is, awareness is, I think, the first thing. So, yeah.
And did you tell me that's in the MIT collection?
Yes. So MIT just featured it, which was very nice. And little story about MIT was when I first came here through my arranged marriage, I lived on MIT campus for 2 years. So it's such a circle that the book they bought was Heart Longs, which was the first one. And so the collector didn't know that I was living on the campus, so it's like a full circle. And so they've been showcasing my books, 2 of my books, and they just showcased Boxed In, so it's very exciting.
That's exciting. And Bridget's curious, clearly following up on your recent excursion to Telluride, how do you like working with leather?
It's tough. It's tough. Because I make artist books, I'm trying to see how I can fit leather into my world, versus thinking about fine binding. I think fine binding is a different world. Somebody said something about, oh, it's what they say. They said fine binding is like fine dining, and artist books are like street food. And I was like, no, I think it's a different view, but to me, it's more like an airplane and a car. They have different things, they do different things. And, one over the other, you can't live without each, and they require different concentration. So that's sort of, my first love is artist books. But I hope to bring some of those practices of fine binding and what I learned with Dawn into my artist books so that they are better finished. So yeah, does that answer?
I think so. Bridget says artist books are the Concord jet. So yeah, she likes your analogy. So I'm a little unclear, the paper cutting and all those patterns that you started, where did you come into art? Because you've mentioned so many things. You made photo books, you've done all these things, and I don't understand the chronology.
So I was working at I started like literally, actually one of the people that was with me at my first jobs, Nzinga is here. I was doing, we did the first makeup site. And after the first makeup site, which was eve.com back in 1999, Sephora decided, oh, we're going to take all of you people and so I ran Sephora.com for a very long time. And then I got tired. I think the tech world started to get toxic for me. And I decided to give it all up. And I moved to New York. And in New York, I think everyone becomes an artist. I don't know. It's like everyone becomes a photographer. It's one of those places where you're like street photography. So I just got into it. And never went back to tech. But I do a lot of tech. As you know, I've rebuilt FOBA, Focus on Book Art's website, the Bay Area Book Artists. I've helped artists build their own website. So, I haven't left it. I still do it on the side, but it started off that way. When New York, it was photography. From photography, I started seeing patterns, like I started doing flowers, and everyone starts with flower photography. And then I needed packaging, so I was like, okay, I can print out. So packaging turned into paper, and so it's all self-taught, literally. I know people say, and all books. So until I was exposed to, I've not taken a paper cutting class. It was just a matter of sitting there and figuring it out.
Doing it.
So a lot of yeah. So it's been a lot of self-taught, and then of course I did take a lot of classes.
Yeah. I think we've got time for one or two more. April's curious about your choice of mechanism and how the boxed in book unfolds and how the structure is integral to the story that you wanted to tell.
So what I wanted was, I've put perspective grids on it, and I know I'm not sharing it, but I've put perspective grids, which is what I wanted to do with the book. One is that it's always a maze of sorts when you're trying to unravel your biases and where you've come from in your family. It's always, so I wanted it to have this experience of being able to not being able to open it from this side, but having to open it. So it's a little difficult. The book, even when MIT was showing it, she was having a little difficulty, and I enjoyed that because I wanted it. I know that a lot of times I've been told, like, you got to be careful how your audience, and I'm like, no, I want them to struggle to find which one is the side on top and which one is, because that's what we all have, is a little difficulty in doing this. So so I did make it so that it visually opens. It's kind of a reveal, and then also it has perspective grids in it, to kind of to show that there are different perspectives out there. Does that answer your question?
I'll speak for her and say yes. Sounded good. Nzinga is curious about how people interact with books as a medium. They seem to necessitate more interaction than a painting and a photograph, and she's curious if you think that's true, and about how much you think the viewer may or may not interact with your book, and if that influences your process.
I think the reason I do books rather than my patterns is because people can interact. It is a big part of, I think a lot of us do books is because it's something that you can engage in, or you can decide not to engage in it. It looks good visually and you just leave it there. I've walked by many books during Codex where they just look good, and I don't want to touch it, and then there are some that I can't help but be. So I think books give you that, and that's what it is. So
Rohini made a comment that I wanted to read, which is, boxed in is one of the most meaningful and emotional renditions of intricate artistry with personal experience.
Thank you.
I love it. So I wanted to make sure I read that comment. Well, We're about out of time, so thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Insiya, for taking the time. I find your work to be very inspirational and meaningful, and I appreciate that you tell your personal stories to us. So thank you for making your books and for sharing them with us. We'll be back next month in July with Josh Dannon. He has a letterpress and Rezo printer in New Hampshire. He runs Direct Angle Press, which is also a residency, and that's sort of in conjunction with our upcoming Rezo show. So if you're interested in learning more about that world, the registration link will be up in a couple of weeks and you can sign up, and we'll see you back here in the future. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming.